Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Same 24 Hours podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Atwood. I'm very excited about our friend today. Our guest, Kortney Olson, is here. Hello.
Hello.
So
Trying to
excited to
like
talk to you.
I'm not in a bedroom on a bed with the
You,
computer balancing on a suitcase.
you are?
Yeah, I am. We're in an Airbnb down in Australia right now. I know it
I would
sounds
have
super
never
polite.
known.
Yeah.
See, you
So
just told your secret and I couldn't tell.
damn it.
Oh my
Hey.
gosh.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, I'm excited to talk with you. I think we have, I don't know, it's very rare that I have a guest that I'm like, we could talk about, I don't know, 19 topics.
Totally.
It's just, there's so much in your story and in your Instagram feed. I'm like, I could talk to her about that. I could talk. I mean, I don't even know where to start with you. I think we should start with your story because I think everyone that's had a really solid rock bottom has an awesome story because rock bottom breeds so much greatness. And that's a lot of my story too. And so let's just start with your story and see where we go because honestly, I feel like if I pick a topic, it would be doing us a disservice.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And I'm super grateful you are doing this and stuck at it because a lot of podcasts on these topics are kind of boring, really. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I
to
aim to be not boring. Maybe
yeah,
a lot of things, but not boring is a big
I
goal.
will I will say I've had Miley Cyrus fucking wrecking ball stuck in my head since I read your post. The post before, I forget which one it was, but yeah,
It
you're
was the one where
right.
I was walking on the treadmill. Yeah.
Yeah, just it's been in there. Okay, I can't sing. I couldn't carry a tune if you strapped that shit to my back. So, but yeah, it's been on repeat for like a
Oh
good,
my gosh.
good hot minute
Well,
now.
it's really rare that I can get a laugh out of my husband. Like but when he does laugh, he really laughs. And so the first post I did after my surgery was me walking on the treadmill to the song Coming In Hot. And it's like coming in hot, and I'm barely walking, and I have like my spa flip flops on. And he laughed so hard at that. And so then I did Wrecking Ball, and he laughed really hard at that. So something about the music combo and my pajama feet walking cracks him
Yeah,
up. So,
that's gold. That's gold. That's all that matters. That's a big score if you can still make your husband laugh, you
after
know?
100 years of marriage.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, coming up on
That's
my
right.
10-year anniversary, and I'm just like, "What?" I couldn't even handle, like, 24 hours with somebody, so it's big win, big win.
Big win, big win. Well, speaking of big wins, you do have quite a story. So let's hear I mean, I don't want to say elevator pitch because I don't want to rush you through it, but let's tell your story because it's a big one and it's definitely a great jumping off point for us.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, but I will attempt a slight elevator pitch because my book took 500 pages, so I thought maybe I will try and, I'll aim for the elevator pitch and probably come out somewhere in the middle. But yeah, and it's probably a story that's similar to yours in a way and everybody else's. Because I mean, the feedback I've been getting from my book is people are like, I just read my story, and I'm like, yeah, well, geez. So, typical girl that grew up hating her legs, thought I was fat, used to daydream about sawing off the inner fat part with a saw, like just ridiculous, product of a divorce and an alcoholic mom. And I think a lot of us don't realize how damaging it is to be raised by a parent that's not present and, hammered 90% of the time. So, by the time I got to junior high, I started counting calories. And then by the time I got to high school, I went down the path of, bulimia well, first started with anorexia and then slid into bulimia my sophomore year. And then by the time I got to my senior year, I was in a Christian rock band, was supposed to be the first female president of the United States. Um, I know, Christian rock band. I look back now and I'm like, what? It's funny. Was, captain of the cheerleading team, all these extracurricular curricular things. And I ended up smoking meth. So as the ASB president, I'd be up for like 2 weeks straight trying to address the student body at a private Catholic high school.
Oh my
This
gosh.
is
How did you smoke meth? I mean, how did it go? Was there gateways? Like, did you
yeah,
start with meth?
bunches.
Did you smoke cigarettes
Yeah.
first? Like,
No, I
what?
went straight into that shit like a
Did
just
you?
slid in, home run. And I knew better, I went through the
Yeah.
DARE program. Okay, I watched the kid that got kicked out that drank mouthwash. John Tyndall, bless his little heart, he pounded mouthwash, got kicked out. I
Oh
saw
my gosh.
growing up in Humboldt County in Northern California, it's just you see lots of drug addicts, and it's either really like grow pot and smoke pot, or make meth in the bathtub and be a tweaker. And I was so desperate to look like Kate Moss, that those were the images in my head with, the 90s Calvin Klein ads. And I will never forget that first ad I saw of her standing on one foot like a fucking peacock, and her other, I guess it was in yoga, it's what's the tree pose or
Right.
whatever. And her collarbones are sticking out, and it was this black and white picture and these little spaghetti straps, and like her jawline was even casting a shadow on her face. And I just so desperately wanted that. And it was funny, I was DJing our Sadie Hawkins dance, and I've got all the CDs packed up in the hatchback of the Honda Accord, and drove over to my best friend's house because she was supposed to be having a party. And I walked in, and my stepsister was there, and like a handful of friends, and like it wasn't a party, but everyone was out back, um, passing around this pipe, and I was just like, you could just tell something was off and wrong. And intuitively looking back, it was like every sign in my body was like, run fast. And I'm
Right.
like, what's going on? And sure enough, I hit that thing, and I hit the pipe. And, from there, I was gone. I was just so addicted to that feeling. And then of course not eating, because I didn't have an appetite. So lost a bunch of weight, pissed away all my scholarships. And then a teacher pulled me up, and being a good private Catholic high school, they were like, do you want us to tell your parents, or do you want to see a drug counselor? I was like, drug counselor, please. And that
Right.
drug counselor sent me to a guy who was supposed to be my mentor, who was like a Golden Gloves boxing champion, an ex-heroin junkie, married to a nun. So what could possibly go wrong? And I went to his boxing class, and with 3 days being clean, he invited me over to his house to watch some boxing tapes, because he wanted to make me his last professional champion before he retired, because the guy was 72. And when I got to his house to watch tapes and, order equipment, he ended up giving me like a cup full of cognac. And at the time, like you don't realize that there's no difference. Like drinking is, you might as well be hitting the meth pipe. It's all
Right.
the same, really. And so that, and then he was smoking a joint, because it's again Humboldt County, and I'd never really smoked pot. I think I'd like it once at that point, but it was evidently laced with something. And after about 20 minutes, I passed out, and I woke up with this guy inside of me, and I was 17, he was 72, and that, I know, right? You're just like, but it's become so, I want to say normalized, but so many women and even men, I've had a lot of men tell me they've had, stuff come up from their childhood that they completely blocked out. And I'm like, damn, this is just such a large topic that, as young people, so many of us get violated in some way, shape, or form, and our brains are so capable of blocking that shit out. Or, doing the other maneuver and just getting hammered for like 20
Right.
years afterwards. So yeah, that pretty much was the point in which my life took a drastic turn. And then from there, I just walked into the shoes of my mom and picked up drinking. Like I put down meth, but then I just became a hardcore alcoholic, and went through a series of trying to quit, and several. I mean, I've wrecked 5 Hondas, including a CBR, and that's
You
why I got
like the
this.
Honda though. They wreck good. I mean, they keep
Yeah,
you safe.
I'm waiting for someone to reach out from Honda and be like, "Hey, can you endorse, this new line coming up or something?" And so yeah, I got into bodybuilding really as a means to a way out, and that became my thing because I was always obsessed with working out since I was, like 7 years old. I was always obsessed with muscle. And that's a whole nother podcast. We could talk about why that happened at some point in the future if you want to do round two. But I got into doing that, and finally, I'd gone to rehab at one point when I was 21 and blah blah blah. Finally got into doing that, and of course, after a few months of being clean and sober, I hurt my back and got addicted to pain pills because that wasn't my problem. My name was on the bottle, totally justifiable. Yeah, I shoved my foot in a high heel for 8 hours a day just so it could look like it was throbbing and really sore, and I needed pain pills. But nonetheless, my name was on the bottle.
Right.
And whilst I was in the gym and doing all the stuff, I stumbled into the muscle fetish world. And I found this ad on Craigslist and at the time I was selling cars. I was an internet sales manager for like 7 dealerships and absolutely could barely drag myself to work because I hated it so much. The repetitiveness, the emptiness. So I was looking for anything I could do. And I'm like, yeah, I'll, do some nude modeling or implied nude for $100 an hour. Let's do this. But this ad was like muscular calf video shoot, ballerinas and athletes need apply. And I'm like, the hell is this? Must be some kind of porn. Let me take a picture of my calf muscles and send it off. And I did right there from my office. And little did I know that one ad would lead me down this 2-year rabbit hole of discovering that the world, Meredith, is not what we think it is. And people are all wearing a mask, in particular men, and that I just had absolutely no idea that my whole life I wanted to be Kate Moss and be a size 0 and have a thigh gap. And there was this whole world, and I'm talking about like federal judges, FBI agents, to um, computer programmers and car mechanics. I'm not talking about like, the high powered CEOs that are mean at their job all day. And then when they get off work, they want to be belittled and called a little bitch and slapped around.
Mhm.
There were some of those, but this was literally every walk of life, every age, every background. There is this whole world of men that were obsessed with female strength and muscle, and the bigger the
No
better.
kidding. I
I'm
do not
not.
know this.
What? Girl, you gotta read
No.
the
I
book.
mean, well,
I'm
I
serious.
assume there's always someone who's obsessed with a something
Yeah, that's it.
anywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Someone will pay for that. That's what I tell
Right.
women all the time. I'm like, hey, someone will pay for that. I'm not even kidding. And discovering and figuring out like, yeah, okay, men are programmed differently, and they're hardwired for different stuff. And I actually got really into this, and I started because what started out as like video clips, and I mean I'd get paid $100 to $300 to do these custom videos, and some guys would have me crush cereal boxes between my legs. Some guys would have me arm wrestle and wrestle other dudes, and of course I always won. Picking up guys or even sometimes women and carrying them around. So there's like a cradle, there's a fireman carry, piggyback rides, shoulder sits, just demonstrating your strength in some way, shape, or form. Um, some are just purely into muscle worship where
And
like they would walk
anyone that's listening right now that knows me is like, Kourtney, stop, stop. You're going to make her do it.
oh,
Because Meredith
seriously.
loves to show how strong she is. She didn't know that there was this world
Have
that she could make money at it. Oh my
have
gosh.
your husband be your manager. He sort it out, and he's they got to go through him. And it just, I had no idea either, and that's why I had to write this book. So when
Yeah.
I literally started this 10 years ago when I met my husband. I actually met him. I was on tour, and he's like, when am I going to get you out to Australia? And I'm like, where the hell is Australia at anyway? So he had flown my ex-boyfriend and myself out there to wrestle, and that's how I met him, funny enough. And I had absolutely zero idea. And sure, there's plenty of guys that are like, I'm much more into Kate Moss and a size 0, but that's just a percentage. The world is just made up in between from there to the exact opposite. There are men who pay women to eat cake. to eat cake, like that whole thing, like Dr. Pimple Popper or whatever that
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was that was 10 years ago. That was on this website. Like that was the thing back then. And I'm like, oh, I can't do that. I'd get requested to do all sorts of random stuff, you know? And you just realize
Wow.
that beauty truly is in the eye of the beholder. You know, it's not the advertiser like we've been led to believe because we think beauty is what's in the eye of the advertiser, and it's the exact opposite, you know. So that really, really was my first watershed. That was like my big turning point in realizing that, you know, everybody's wearing a mask. And when I get pulled over by a cop now, I'm like, oh, yeah, I bet I know what you like to do when you get off work. You want to put on women's pantyhose and have me slap you around. It's totally fine, you know, but society tells men, and you know, this is where I kind of started out was, I guess you'd say, a men's right activist, which is quite funny now because I appear to be, some guys think I hate men. I'm like, no, man, no, that's not it at all. But, uh, you know, and saying to these guys, like, look, society tells you, and what's your husband's name? Or we can
James.
make James, you act like a man. You don't step outside this box or you're a little bitch. You're the breadwinner. You don't cry, you know, like all these
Right.
things that men are supposed to be. And that they do, you know, struggle with that just as much as women do, you know. And like with your you have two sons, right?
I have a son and a daughter.
Oh, a daughter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Good 50 split
Yeah.
insanity.
I don't
That's why
know
I
which
have
is
my
worse.
kids.
It's like,
I tell people, I'm like, no, I'd be in prison for beating them 100%. No, I don't know how you do it.
well, you don't want to
Seriously.
beat him. It's more like I tell my son, I'm like, you're lucky I'm not a lion because I'd have done eating your head off by now. I'm like, some days you're just looking at them and they do something, you think I could just eat your face like a
Yeah.
lion right now. Just you're gone. Yeah. So
Oh,
not beating as much as eating. So I don't know
yeah,
what
yeah.
fetish that is, but whatever.
Right. Somebody, I'm sure. I'm sure of it. And that's the thing, you know, like there is not one person that is that. I mean, maybe there is, but it's so rare that it's that cookie cutter, leave it to Beaver,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, so nonetheless, but your son would still be, I mean, and kids these days, this is a whole new ball game with, you know, what they're doing and the shit they're exploring and talking about. So good on them. I still fight it a lot of the times. I'm like, what do you mean I can't address the crowd as, hey, you guys? Like, come on.
I know.
You
I say
know,
you guys all the time.
I
I
know,
know.
I know. It's just a ton that I need to, you know, move forward with. But it's been quite interesting to go through that experience and say, right, the world is not what we think it is. These gender norms and thinking that girls have got to be X, Y, and Z is a crock of shit. And, you know, let me do something about that. So to fast forward and to get to the end of this elevator pitch, which is turning out so well, um, basically my husband, so I moved out here to Australia, fell in love. We got married 3 months after we met, so it was a bit of an alcoholic move, but whatever. Worked out well in the end. Like I said, we're about to come up on 10 years. And he took a job as the CEO of a national rugby team, which is like the equivalent of the NFL, you know, like the Raiders or something. And at the time, I knew that I was tired of being a sex symbol, if you will, is how stupid that sounds. And I was getting paid $400 an hour to either beat men up or choke them out with my legs or, you know, smash watermelons in front of them, um, you know, arm wrestle them, whatever. And I was like, this is great money, but it's still, I have a void in my soul. You know, I want to share this message with women and tell them that the world is not what we think it is. And it was at that time too, I started noticing how good it felt to connect with other women and to compliment another woman and like to not see each other as competition. So I kind of started
Mm.
sliding that a little bit. And he took this job subsequently at the same time and he said, hey, well, there was a volunteer position to be the strength training coach for the under 20s or the under 18s, which is like the B feeder team, you know? And so I was doing that for a few weeks, trying to figure out what it was I was going to be doing. And a journalist saw that my last name was different than my husband's and did a little bit of Googling around and found my old videos, you know, on this clip store, which was an adult only website. but I didn't have anything on there that was I wasn't even topless or, it had
Mhm.
my watermelon smashing video, which I'm sure you've seen it at some
Yeah.
point. Yeah, like, there was a way to put that up and make residual income because women being strong and, overpowering men is a fetish because, we don't really see it in mainstream. We kinda do now. This was 10 years ago, mind you. And, so he wrote this headline that said, CEO hires ex fetish porn star wife to train the under 20s. And that one headline got syndicated and it went around the world because of Rupert Murdoch. And it just spun off into all these different things. And I became the center of a porn scandal. And I was this, junkie, I hadn't drank or done drugs, but what a disgrace. And it was shocking. It was absolutely shocking. But the interesting thing was the day before this story broke, I'd applied with Big Brother, Big Sister because I was like, this is a cool job, but I want to talk to teenage girls or do something, and say like, look, hey, don't get your tits out and send a picture to your older boyfriend so he buys you beer. He's a
Right.
dirtbag. Why? Here's how to be assertive. If maybe you have alcoholism in the family and your grandma can't drink, like here's what that means. Just all the stuff I wish you and I were taught in school.
Right.
And so then again, the next day the story broke. A month later, because Australia shuts down for the whole month of Christmas. It's crazy. They're like, yeah, take a month off, no problem. We were like, one day, get your ass back to work.
Right.
So then Big Brother, Big Sister had called me. I forgot all about the application. And they were like, hey, you know, we think it's great what you're doing. We read your blog, see you're writing a book. Because again, I started this 10 years ago. And I said, but unfortunately, we can't work with you. If a mentoree can Google you and, see what you've been up to, why then, we're really sorry. And then I was like, oh, I was just wrecked. I'm like, oh, I am a piece of shit. And they were right.
Right.
And I was just fucking gutted. Like someone ripped my heart out and stomped on it on the ground and just told me that basically everything I thought that I was going to be able to do, now I can't do. And I literally sat there for 15 minutes and just sobbed. And for some reason, and you hear the term God shot, people say, oh, I had a God shot moment. And it was like that. It was like a spiritual experience, but it wasn't a burning bush per se, but I just had the word no came across my head. And it was like all of a sudden I was like, you know what? Fuck that. I'm going to start my own program ran by people who've been there and done that and not just talk the talk, but actually walk the walk, not learn about this shit out of a textbook.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I sat at my kitchen table rather, sat at my kitchen at the table for the next 9 months and wrote a program called Camp Confidence for teenage girls and came up with this structure to teach them the 5 habits, lessons, and principles that lead to the development of self-love. And in that, once they get that, then they will stop seeing each other as competition. And these teenage girls would come, they were cutting themselves. Meredith, I mean, just gorgeous. Look at your daughter, right? You sit and you
Yeah.
look at her,
Oh
you're like,
gosh.
right? You're like, you are so perfect. You have absolutely everything in front of you. This is incredible. And then, a year later, she's like cutting herself. I'm fat. I'm ugly. I'm just like, oh, what is going on?
Right.
And realizing how detrimental social media is to them, and they're not fully conscious and all of these things that are happening that they're not learning in school. So it was truly a remarkable program. And these girls would come and after the weekend, because it was a full weekend, they would have 10 best new best friends. And I wrote this thing called the pledge. It says, I solemnly swear to the best of my ability to refrain from talking negatively about myself as well as other girls. I'm an equal amongst my peers, and I do not see myself as neither better than nor less than. Through this pledge of non judgment, I understand and embrace that I'm having a positive impact on the world and furthering the global revolution of body acceptance. And they would take this shit together, and then they would put these little crappy cyan bands on each other's wrists. Oh, like a Live Strong band, that
Yeah. Yeah.
said
Yeah.
confidence. Yeah, confidence with a K. So when they would be out in there in the world and they'd see another girl with that band on, they knew straight away that that was their sister and not their competition. And that, they came from the same place, Camp
Right.
Confidence. And and after we had about 62 girls go through it, and it actually happened, two girls ran into each other out on the street. We're like, oh, super cool, oh, crying moment. And then one of my partners got pregnant. And I was like, you do that, like, props to you, but I keep, and so we stopped the program. And then in the downtime, I thought, right, how do we take the same mission and vision from Camp Confidence and get that out to the world? And my husband actually had come up with the idea of, well, why don't you do a clothing line? Because he saw me, trying to put dumb shit on a t-shirt for months. And he's like, yeah,
Our poor
let's,
husbands. That was I
I
put
know.
dumb shit on t-shirts too. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. So that then became Girl Clothing. And that pledge is on all of our hang tags on all the clothing. So instead of this shitty little cyan band, now women, obviously it's got a different name, it's got a different logo, different color, different pathway, I suppose, but it's the same shit. So, when you see another girl out on the street and you see her girl leggings or whatever, you're like, oh, what up? She's, we're coming from the same thought, the same, you're not my competition. And it's remarkable to see how that transition went, from that to that, from like smashing watermelons and laughing at dudes in their tiny whatever. I won't go into too much detail, but never know who's watching. But from picking up men and carrying them around a hotel room and getting paid $400 to do it, to now empowering women to say, hey, no one gives a shit about your cellulite but you. And that's a direct design from the diet industry for you to feel
Right.
miserable and trapped, and keep trying to fill that void in your soul with shit that will never leave it fulfilled. So that's kind of the story, really. And now
Yeah.
been doing that for 5 years, and here we are.
Well, so what can you share the steps that you, at least part of Camp Confidence, like the steps towards this radical self-love that you want teenage girls? I would love to hear at least a couple of
Yeah,
them.
yeah, totally. So, and it's funny because now I'm to that point now where I hate clothing. I really do. I'm like, put us all in a uniform or be naked or something. Give us a spacesuit. I'm not a fashionista by any stretch of the imagination. I didn't even wear a t-shirt till like the fifth grade, until I started sharing a room with my stepsister, who was a year older than me, and she had like double D's in the sixth grade. And I'm like, oh, man. So with camp, it was, so the 5 habits, which are fitness, nutrition, self-defense, meditation, and journaling, which I kind of changed the name to personal development when we started doing this with women. It's basically there's a whole journaling book that goes through these different steps, and of course getting used to doing a gratitude list, and
Mhm.
uh, all these things. And I would show them, for example, there's a movie, it's more or less a documentary, but it's called The Stoning of Soraya M. And it's a true story on this woman in the Middle East who, her husband accuses her of adultery because he saw her talking to their neighbor and was basically like, fuck it, I want a younger wife. And she gets buried up to her waist in her wedding dress, and her father is the first one to throw rocks at her head. Like, she gets stoned for this, and then her sons. And it's just like, are you serious? In the West, here we are, you little shits don't want to go to school because you're getting bullied, or you're bullying the other person, or you can't wear your hair asymmetrically, or whatever shit you're banging on about. But look what's happening out in the rest of the world. Like, the women in the Middle East are getting stoned because they don't go out wearing a scarf over their head. Like, let's get it together here. Or I'd ask, talk about Malala. And I'm like, she got shot on the bus in the head because she refused to get off of it because she's refused an education. Like, oh, my tears get all, my eyes get all filled up with tears. And I'm just like so angry. And they're just like, oh my God, because a lot of us just don't have a clue outside of what's
Right.
going on in our little sphere. I'm in a bed, I've got a roof over my head, like just basic things. And it's like we know, even as an adult, you it's like you can know it, but you don't know it. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not living it, but you know it and you know better. It's interesting to take it from here to here.
Right.
Get to
Right.
your heart. Yeah.
Right.
But it's so true. So they would go through that and work on creating awareness. And then that night, they'd make their little vision boards and all the rest of it. And then with the principles were honesty, forgiveness, service, gratitude, and laughter. And I'd take them through laughter yoga. I don't know if you've ever seen laughter yoga, but
No.
it's oh my god, it's hysterical. You actually, and there's like some trend right now on TikTok where you fake laugh until it becomes laughter. I'm like, yeah, dick, that's laughter yoga. That's an actual real thing. This is from a doctor in India who realized, laughter is the best medicine, and tried to like make something out of it and do comedy, and then realized that that's not sustainable. So now it's this actual format where, with their breathing exercises and childlike behavior in a group of people making eye contact, your fake laughter eventually becomes real laughter.
Hmm.
And it is the only time I've ever been able to like properly meditate, being without thought for an extended period of time. And I was so upset at first when I got thrown into a laughter yoga situation at a conference. I was like, I'm supposed to be here learning about a business. What is this shit? My ego was so pissed off. We're standing on one foot, jumping around, acting like a flamingo or something. I'm like, this is so dumb. And then I caught somebody's eye and I was like, you look so dumb. I look so dumb. And I just started laughing and I could not stop. I laughed for like 40 minutes straight. I had a migraine the next day. I had laughed so hard. So taking them through laughter yoga and realizing, like no one gets out of life like, that what is it? No one gets out by without paying taxes, or taxes and death are the only things that are
Right. Death.
guaranteed.
Right.
Yeah. Death and taxes. There you go.
Death and taxes.
That's right. So I'm like, you have the ability to laugh at yourself, have some humility. Like, yeah, when I was drinking, I took a shit in your bathtub and then wiped my ass with your girlfriend's white robe. I laughed. I did that. Obviously I didn't laugh at first because really sombering to get
To
sober and
do that.
realize like, oh
Yeah.
my God. So the laughter yoga, and then the lessons were acceptance. Well, let's go the right direction: awareness, acceptance, assertiveness, self-belief, and um, gosh, what was the last one? Escapes me off the top of my head. But the most important, like for example, out of those, I believe, is the assertiveness piece. And we put them through assertiveness training and just teach the basic things, because especially as girls, we feel guilty for not accommodating everybody else, and we say yes when we want to say no. And when we say no, we're treated as being bitchy or stuck up, as opposed to with boys, it's like, oh, you're a leader,
Right.
great job. Whereas with us, when we want to say, express ourselves properly, it's like, oh, she's a bitch. It's like, no, I'm just telling you how it is. So teaching them those basic things and getting them to use I statements like, well, I feel. And then of course, like, effective communication, and not texting your parents. And we would get them to come home. You imagine your 12-year-old daughter coming home and being like, Mom, we need to talk. You raise your voice a little bit. Mom, I'm not going to have this conversation with you if you're going to raise your voice. But, you know, we would be like, look, your parents are doing the best they can with the tools that they've been given. It's up
Right.
to you to stop acting like a little shit and take responsibility for your life, break that cycle, and be the bigger person. And
Right.
this way, you don't have to sneak out when you're 17. You can negotiate your way out, you see? So just stuff like that. It was quite powerful.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, I
amazing.
mean, the power of communication, that's amazing. That's amazing. And I
Right.
did a lot of work with my kids this past year, and I don't mean with them, I mean on myself, on how I
Yeah.
would speak with them and
Yep.
speak to them, because I was getting more amplified, also known as yelly, as my
Yeah.
son said, because I would just be like, "Are you kidding me that I'm having to ask you?" And it would make me so mad, and I would just get because I come from a long line of people. When you want something done, you yell at them,
Yeah.
and so I just kind of made this. decision, like, I'm not gonna yell
Yeah.
anymore, like, at my kids, and so to do that, I said anytime I yelled, they would each get $5. So they got
Nice.
really rich for a period of about 3 weeks
Yeah.
while I broke my yelly habit.
Yeah.
But what I realized in the process is there were just their attitude was just a reflection of my poor communication to them.
Yeah.
And they were just responding to crazy ass mom, and so learning that most of what I was getting from them, they were just giving back. They were
Yeah.
giving back in their language and in their way, and so to teach all of us, I mean, not just the kids, I mean, all of us need a reboot on
Yep.
how we communicate, because we did learn to communicate poorly.
Yep.
If you exist in this world, you learned how to communicate poorly. I think this generation is starting to figure out how to
Yeah.
fix that, but the last 2 generations, there was no real
Yep.
great ways done, I don't think.
And then you add in electronic communication, right? And
Yeah,
people are on
right.
Facebook and just sitting there pissing into the wind at each other with comments and or text messages, like I remember my niece had sent my brother a text and it was so super passive aggressive, but when I would read it out loud and I'm like, listen, and then I would read it like she was super pissed off, then she was super sad, and then I'm like, you can't tell without pitch, tone, speed, like this is the worst form of communicating ever. Like how many times have you had the most basic misunderstanding? It just happened the other day. We bought a car and the it had like 14 kilometers, 7 miles on it. And the finance guy was like, oh, we're just waiting on parts. My husband was like, well, I don't want a new car that needs parts, forget about it. Like take your $500 and shove it for the deposit. And after getting on the phone, the other guy was trying to say, because he's from the UK and he was calling parts. He wasn't calling them accessories. They're just floor mats.
Oh,
And right, like they're accessories, dude. No, it's not. That's not a part.
right.
But it's just the most basic shit. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Well,
hopefully I
oh,
get
go
back
ahead.
to that. I was just gonna say, hopefully at some point I get back to that because that's what I like to get out of bed for,
Yeah,
because it's your daughter that's gonna be running stuff here very soon, you
right.
know?
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
she will run the
I
world.
know. You're like, thanks for that reminder.
Yes,
Appreciate
she
it.
will run the world for sure. So tell us about your book. You said it was a 10-year project, and
Yeah.
so how's it going? I love to promote authors, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm one, so I like to help
Oh,
others. But tell us about your book, where they can find it, and
oh.
what's it about?
So it's called Crushing It, which unfortunately I didn't realize, and I should have looked into this, shoulda, woulda, coulda, beforehand. But Gary V has written a book called Crushing It, so I was like, damn. But it's basically a self-help memoir, because at the end of every lesson, there's a series of journaling questions that we just started a book club yesterday, actually. And so we get these women into small groups of 3 or 4 to go through these questions because it's a lot easier with a friend, or somebody to do it with for accountability. But I didn't. It's the same thing with like doing the steps in recovery. It's not until you put pen to paper
Right.
and you start creating awareness around all these things from your past and why am I programmed the way that I'm programmed and why do I do the things that I do? And, what things do I want to change? Just creating awareness. And I say memoir, and you're like, oh, I don't know. I would never read someone's memoir unless it was Prince, you know. But that being said, it's really an addiction, body image memoir, if you will. And then, of course, that piece I was telling you about with the muscle fetish industry, because that really in my experience, is tipping the patriarchy on its head. Now, I'm not a feminist. I've never identified with that term, even though I suppose by Webster's definition, that is what I stand for and what I'm doing, is fighting for women's equality and whatnot. But the word feminist just has never resonated with me for some reason. But with the patriarchy, it's like, yeah, our whole system is designed around men and their empowerment and, being masculine. And so I question the gender roles, and we're us being souls having a human experience. And, we can go into both of be gender fluid, if you will. Like, I know there's a lot of people that are still quite confused by gender. So I go into that a bit as well. But it's essentially is a self-help manifesto style book. And it's a super fast read, I'm told, because like I told you, 500 pages, forget about it. I have so many goddamn books, Meredith. Like, I love to buy books. I just don't read, and that's primarily because I am slightly ADD, but I've recently crashed and burned with my thyroid, and that's why I slowed down enough to be like, let me reach out to Meredith because previously, seriously, I think we'd connected like 2 years ago, and
Yeah,
I
I think you're
just
right.
moved to Vegas, and I mean, I gas pedal to the floor nonstop 24/7 for the last 7 years, really the last 10 years. I went to traveling internationally. Before it was tours with this, and then now, with the clothing line. And like I told you before, it's like something, but you don't know it, like, because you're not doing it. And I knew
Right.
eventually I was gonna crash and burn. But this time around, because I was diagnosed with Graves' disease 3 years ago, which is an autoimmune disorder. It's the opposite of Hashimoto's. So you got hypothyroid, where your
Mhm.
thyroid slows down. Like 2 out of 10 women have some kind of thyroid condition. And then there's hyper, which is less prominent, but that's where your shit speeds up. And I mean, I lost like 20 pounds in 3 weeks. I'm like, what the hell's going on? You lose your I know, at first I was like, "Oh, hey," and then, like, I'm like,
Hey.
"Oh, no, my strength left
Like, can
too."
I
Like,
get a side of Graves with my
yeah,
dinner tonight, please?
I
I'll
did
take
that
that disease.
when I got diagnosed. I was like, "All right." Went out, had, like, 3 hamburgers, I did it was hot mess express. And, I managed the symptoms enough to get my thyroid to get back in balance. But now, unfortunately, if you don't attach it or attack it at the root, it's just going to come back. It's just putting a band-aid on top of it. So this time around, it started about early December, and I was waking up at 3 a.m. on the dot. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then I started getting my heart, like, um, it was going AFib again. Like, it would skip a beat. And then slowly but surely, it was 2 days after we got to hotel quarantine. So when you come out to Australia, you do 2 weeks in a hotel. No fucking, you only open the door to get your food, no windows to open. I mean, it was interesting.
Hmm.
Um, with my husband, and nobody brought a book of matches for the bathroom. So that was great. But we made it. And 2 days into it, though, my thyroid shit the bed, and I had like a resting heart rate of 170. I'm like, yeah, that ain't good. That's not
Oh my
great.
gosh.
Yeah. So it's been about 3 months, and it's finally stabled again. But now I'm like, okay, no more. I need to chill off the caffeine, the legal stimulants, which I won't say what it was, because if someone out there listening is like me, they will go find it and start taking it. Because I got a lot of shit done, let me tell you. It was great. I picked it up off of a blog from Dave Asprey from, I think that's how you say his last name.
Yeah,
Bulletproof guy.
bulletproof, yeah.
No, I'll punch that guy in the dick if I ever meet him. Oh, I will. Absolutely will. So yeah, it took a hot minute, but I finally, gave that all up. And I think I've meditated for 4 days in a row now. And I've been trying to do that for 10 years. So sometimes you gotta almost die to start
Right.
living, you know?
Well, I mean, it seems like you're a little bit like me. Like, we gotta find out for ourselves before we,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, that's them. Let's see how this works for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. 100%. Let me go ahead
For
and try
sure.
that 5 different ways, my own way. And
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Well, Kourtney,
Yeah.
I could talk to you for 100 years.
I
We didn't
know,
even
girl.
scratch the surface
Like
on
30
all the
minutes.
things.
We can get a lot done in 30 minutes, like
Oh
an
my
hour
gosh.
later. I
All
would
the
love to
things.
get you some gear before you
Yeah,
go. So
I will wear it. Yes, for
we
sure.
will organize
Um,
that.
tell everyone where they can follow you, because seriously, go to this girl's Instagram and scroll
Oh,
and scroll and scroll to the bottom and read up, because I feel like some people, and this sounds very conceited, but like, if you scroll to the bottom of my Instagram and go all the way up, you're like, who is this human? Because there's been like so many adventures. and
Right?
so many like growths and changes. And I feel like yours is that way too. So you're
Yeah,
a
definitely.
kindred spirit. So
Kindred spirit, old souls, we got to hang out in real life when this
that's
virus is
right.
off. So,
That's right. So
uh,
Kourtney_Olson, right? On
yeah,
Instagram.
that's it.
Okay.
KORTNY_Olson. That's usually where I'm at the most is on
Yeah,
Instagram. So,
that's right. And your
or
book, Crushing It, the subtitle is, it has a great subtitle.
how I smashed, oh my gosh, how I smashed addiction, diet culture, and the patriarchy.
That's right. Gary
Yeah.
Vee doesn't have that one.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, for sure. So thank you
All
so
right.
much for having me. I'm glad good things come to those of us that wait and be
And
patient.
do things on our own terms.
Right. That's right.
Hi, and welcome to the Same 24 Hours podcast. I'm Meredith Atwood, author of the book, The Year of No Nonsense. I'm a former attorney turned writer, speaker, and Ironman triathlete. Although right now, all I really like to do is lift weights. We all have the same 24 hours, but it's what we do in those hours that leads to our greatest health, happiness, and success. It's my goal to crack the code on a life of less nonsense so we can all make the most of our 24 hours. So let's get started.